You're the fifth one this week. Don't get your hopes up. The secretary didn't even look up as she motioned toward the door. Arielle Monroe stood frozen in the grand marble hallway of the Ashbourne estate, clutching a worn-out leather purse and a folder that held nothing but qualifications no one ever seemed to care about. She'd rehearsed her introduction 100 times, smiled in the mirror, even when she felt hollow. But none of that mattered now. Not when rent was overdue. Not when Liana's school had just sent their final tuition warning. This wasn't a job interview. It was her last lifeline. She smoothed the front of her black blouse, took a deep breath, and pushed open the door. Inside, the office was bigger than her entire apartment. Every corner whispered wealth and indifference. Behind the oversized mahogany desk sat a man in a tailored navy suit, scribbling on documents without glancing up. "You're here for the caregiver position." His voice was clipped, cold. He still didn't look at her. "Yes, sir," she managed. "I have 4 years of—" "Save it," he interrupted. "Can you bathe a paraplegic, handle diapers, administer meds, keep your mouth shut?" "Yes, sir." Her voice cracked, but she held steady. Finally, he looked up. His gaze traveled from her shoes to her tired eyes. "You're hired. Room and board included. You start at 6 tomorrow." Arielle's heart stumbled. I can't stay overnight. I have a daughter." "Then you're not hired," he said flatly, already looking back down at his papers. For a second, the world stood still. Then she said something she hadn't planned. Something reckless and terrified and brave. "She can come with me. She's quiet. 7. I swear she won't be any trouble." There was a pause. Then he picked up his phone and muttered, "Clear out the small room next to the staff quarters." Click. And just like that, Arielle Monroe had walked into the lion's den, but she didn't know yet. The lion was still alive and watching. It was nearly midnight when Arielle and her daughter arrived at the Ashbourne estate with nothing but 2 small suitcases and a stuffed giraffe named Tofu. Liana pressed her face to the car window as the wrought iron gates creaked open. "Mama, it looks like a castle." Arielle didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the shadowed windows of the massive house. There were no lights in the front rooms, just the faint flicker of candlelight from somewhere deep inside. The driver didn't speak. He didn't offer to help with their bags. He simply opened the door, nodded once, and drove away. The silence swallowed them. Inside, Mrs. Whitmore, the head housekeeper, led them down a long corridor lined with faded portraits. Most were covered with cloth. Where family photos might have been, there were only pale rectangles on the wallpaper, like someone had tried to erase a past that refused to disappear. "This is your room?" she said, opening a small door near the back stairs. It smelled of lavender and mothballs. The sheets were folded military tight, and the little one can have that room next door. The room was barely larger than a closet, but Liana clutched her giraffe and whispered, "It's perfect." Arielle smiled and blinked back tears. "We'll make it home," she whispered, more to herself than to her daughter. Before leaving, Mrs. Whitmore paused. "Word of advice, dear. Don't go wandering, and steer clear of Miss Delacroix. That woman's smile is sharper than her heels." Arielle wanted to ask more, but the housekeeper was already gone. That night, as Liana slept, curled up with Tofu, Arielle sat on the edge of her bed staring at the dark ceiling. Something wasn't right. The house felt hollow. Beautiful on the outside, but stripped of life on the inside, as if it was built to keep something in, or someone. And tomorrow she'd meet him, the man she was hired to care for. The man they all said couldn't speak, couldn't move, but who deep down might still be listening. If you're already sensing that something's not right behind these mansion walls, don't look away. Subscribe to Hidden Black Voices so you won't miss more emotional and powerful black stories like this. The next morning, Arielle stood in front of the double doors of the master suite. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the handle. A woman's voice called from inside, "Come in." The room was nothing like the rest of the mansion. Floor-to-ceiling windows bathed everything in light except the bed where he lay, Dorian Ashbourne, the man whose name carried weight in every headline, whose family's wealth could buy silence in 1,000 ways. But in this moment he looked like a shell, pale, motionless, his body sunken into expensive linen sheets. His eyes stared out at nothing. Next to him stood a woman too polished for mourning, tight bun blood-red lipstick, a silk blouse that probably cost more than Arielle's monthly income. "You must be the help," she said, not bothering to introduce herself. "He's been like this since the crash. Don't waste your time trying to talk. He doesn't even blink when I scream." Arielle said nothing. She just walked to the bed. "Good morning, Mr. Ashburn," she said, gently smoothing the sheet. And then something flickered. His fingers twitched. It could have been a reflex, a nerve misfire, but Arielle's gut said otherwise. The woman Isadora Delacroix, she'd later learn, didn't notice. She was too busy reapplying lipstick in a compact mirror. "Dr. Castell will brief you on his regimen. Don't improvise." Then she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive perfume and something colder ownership. Moments later, a severe-looking woman in a white coat entered with a medical bag. "Daily care, hygiene, repositioning, light feeding," Dr. Castell recited. "Avoid conversation. It only agitates him." Arielle nodded. But her mind was racing. When she lifted Dorian to adjust his position, she noticed it again. That same subtle response. A tensing of the shoulder. A blink that felt purposeful. And for the first time since arriving, she spoke not as an employee, but as a woman who knew what it felt like to be unseen. "If you can hear me," she whispered under her breath, blinked twice. He didn't move, not right away. But as she leaned in to adjust the pillows, she caught it. 2 slow, distinct blinks. Her breath caught in her throat. Someone was in there, buried under sedatives and silence, but alive. And whatever had happened in this house, it wasn't an accident. Liana had always been good at being invisible. She'd learned early that grown-ups talked differently when they thought she wasn't listening. That's how she knew things quietly, carefully, like picking up fallen leaves without rustling the branches. And this house, it was full of fallen things. On her 3rd day at the Ashbourne estate, while Arielle was tending to Mr. Ashbourne upstairs, Liana wandered down the long, echoing hallways. She wasn't supposed to, but the grown-ups were always too busy looking down to notice a child looking up. That's when she saw the door. It was slightly open, just a crack. Inside, the man her mother cared for lay still in the big bed. But Liana wasn't fooled. At her old school, Jason Thompson used to fake sleep during nap time. His eyes would twitch when he heard candy wrappers. She stepped in slowly, holding Tofu the giraffe tight. "Hi," she whispered. "I'm Liana. My mama says you're very brave." The man didn't move, but something shifted his breathing. Just slightly. Liana tiptoed closer. "You're not really asleep, are you? It's okay. I won't tell." Then she did something no adult had done in weeks. She gave him comfort. Pulling Mr. Tofu from her backpack, she tucked the plush giraffe gently beside his hand. "He always makes me feel safe," she said. "You can borrow him." That's when she noticed it. A cup on the nightstand. The water inside looked cloudy, faintly off. Her friend Maria at school took medicine sometimes, but hers didn't make the water look like that. Later that evening, while her mama brushed out her hair, Liana spoke carefully. "Mama, I think they're giving him bad medicine, the kind that makes people forget." Arielle froze mid-brush. "Where did you see that baby?" "In his room. The doctor lady didn't even help him drink it. She just left it there." Arielle's heart pounded. What Liana had witnessed, it wasn't childish imagination. It was the truth, pure, unfiltered. And suddenly Arielle realized she wasn't alone in this house anymore. She had an ally, a small, fearless one. If little Liana touched your heart the way she touched ours, leave a in the comments. Let's give more voices like hers a chance to be heard. Share this black story today. That night, after Liana had drifted off to sleep, Arielle sat alone in the corner of her room, holding a small flashlight and flipping through the notes she'd started keeping in the margins of an old notebook. Every blink, every twitch, every time his body responded to her touch. And now, Liana's quiet confession about the water. Cloudy, unassisted, suspicious. It wasn't just instinct anymore. It was evidence. Arielle's grandmother used to say, "They only fear what they can't control." So if they fear your silence, baby, it's because they know you see too much. And Arielle had started seeing it all. The precise times the doctor showed up always after Isadora had a meeting. The way Mr. Ashbourne's condition never improved, no matter what the treatment was. The convenient power of attorney she overheard, mentioned in passing between staff gossip and whispers in the kitchen. She kept her face calm, kept her movements measured. But every day she studied them, Mrs. Whitmore started to notice. "You watch like someone with secrets," the older woman said quietly as they folded linen together one afternoon. "And you?" Arielle asked. Mrs. Whitmore gave a long sigh. "I've worked here 32 years, buried more truths in this house than I care to count. But maybe it's time we dig some back up." That night she handed Arielle a tiny brass key. "To the old records room," she said. "Top of the East Wing. They say it's off limits. That's usually where the truth lives." By the next morning, Arielle had a plan. Each time she entered Dorian's room, she smiled for the cameras, spoke softly for the staff, and cared for him like she was supposed to. But when no one watched, she whispered. She listened, and he began to respond. 2 blinks for yes, 1 for no. Then one day, as she leaned in to change his shirt, his fingers tightened around hers just for a second. Just enough. It was working, but someone else was watching too. Later that evening, she found her medical card tampered with. A bottle replaced, a label missing. No note, just a message loud and clear. They knew. And now she had to move even faster. Because in this house, secrets didn't stay buried. They buried you. Arielle had always believed that silence was survival. But in this house, silence had become something else. Weaponized, twisted, used to bury truth under marble floors and designer rugs. Until Mrs. Whitmore stopped folding sheets and started folding secrets into her palm instead. They met late one night in the old laundry room under the hum of fluorescent lights and the scent of starch. "I found this," the older woman whispered, pulling a wrinkled photo from her apron. It showed a younger Dorian with his father, both smiling alive. Behind them stood a third figure, a man in a suit, the same man Arielle had seen on a blurry security feed earlier that week. A board member, still active. He was against the merger, Whitmore said. Just like Miss Delacroix, just like Marcus Dorian's cousin. They didn't want Dorian changing how things were run. "What do you mean?" Whitmore met her eyes. "He wasn't like the others. He wanted accountability, transparency. He wanted to use the Ashbourne fortune to make things right." Arielle swallowed. "And now he's locked in his own body, watching them destroy everything he tried to fix." Mrs. Whitmore's voice shook. "I raised him child, changed his diapers, watched him grow. He used to leave me birthday cards under my teacup. I know that boy is still in there. And if you can get him out, I'll help you bring them down." That night, they began working in quiet coordination. While Arielle documented symptoms and gathered vials of questionable medication, Whitmore unearthed old financial records, handwritten notes, even scraps of emails she wasn't supposed to have. 2 women, one forgotten and the other underestimated, now moving like a shadow network within the very halls meant to contain them. But time was running out, because Liana, curious and fearless, had just wandered too far down the west corridor, and what she saw would change everything. The boardroom of Ashbourne Enterprises was built to intimidate. Tall glass walls, oil paintings of men who'd built their fortunes on legacy, not conscience, rows of suited investors murmuring behind nameplates. At the head of the table sat Marcus Ashbourne, Dorian's cousin, calm, composed, lethal behind a smile. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus began smoothly. "Given my cousin's incapacitation, it's in the company's best interest that leadership be formally transferred. I've prepared a proposal." The double doors burst open. Every head turned. Arielle stepped inside, first steady and poised. Behind her, Mrs. Whitmore wheeled in someone no one expected to ever see again. Dorian Ashbourne, alive, awake, and watching. The room fell silent. Marcus stood up, face draining. "What the hell is this?" "It's called the truth," Arielle replied. Gasps echoed as Dorian slowly raised his hand and placed it on the microphone. His voice was rough, broken from months of disuse, but firm. "I never signed over my power of attorney. I never approved the merger block. And I never consented to the medication I was given." A stunned silence. Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward, holding a folder. Inside are medical records, surveillance footage, and financial discrepancies, proof that Dorian was drugged under Marcus's direction. And what would a maid know about this? One board member sneered. "I've served this family longer than you've held your stock," she snapped. "And I never forgot how to watch people lie." Then Liana stepped forward, holding a crayon drawing. "This is the doctor lady," she said softly. "And this is the glass she put the cloudy water in. And this is when Mr. Dorian cried, because he couldn't talk." The investors didn't laugh. They leaned in. Because the drawing wasn't just childish scribbles. It depicted the medication bottle, the brand label, even the timestamps from the bedside camera. "I saw it too," Arielle said. "But I was just the help. No one listens to women like me. Single mothers, caregivers, people you assume won't fight back." She looked around the room. "But we do, when it matters." Marcus lunged forward, a voice cracking. "This is insane. They're manipulating him." Dorian interrupted. "Touch her," he growled, "and I'll see you rot in prison." Within minutes, security escorted Marcus out. Press alerts lit up. The board delayed the vote. And for the first time in months, Dorian stood weak, trembling, but upright. He reached for Arielle's hand. "You saved my life," he whispered. "Now help me save what's left of this legacy." Arielle nodded. But even as relief swept through the room, she couldn't shake the chill crawling up her spine. Because while Marcus had fallen, the real mastermind had not. And they were watching from the shadows. Have you ever felt silence just like Arielle or Dorian? If so, type "I see you" in the comments. Let's build a space where powerful Black stories are never ignored. A year later, the Ashbourne estate no longer whispered secrets. Laughter echoed through its once silent halls. The heavy drapes had been pulled back. Sunlight spilled over warm wooden floors. Where once hung portraits of stone-faced patriarchs, now were children's drawings, crayon-colored rainbows, hand-traced turkeys, and one familiar figure, a smiling man in a wheelchair, holding hands with a little girl and her giraffe. Dorian Ashbourne had reclaimed his name. But more than that, he'd rebuilt his life. With Arielle, with Liana, and with the truth. The company had been restructured. Ashbourne Enterprises now funded rehabilitation centers, shelters for trafficking survivors, and legal aid clinics for single mothers wronged by the system. It wasn't just business, it was redemption in motion. In the garden that once felt like a cage, Arielle stood barefoot in the grass, her hand resting gently on her growing belly. "She's kicking again," she said softly. Dorian, still regaining strength, but walking now, stepped up beside her. "She must know she's got a big sister waiting." Liana darted through the rose bushes in her party dress. Tofu the giraffe tucked under her arm like a guardian of joy. Arielle turned to Dorian. "Do you ever think about how close we were to losing everything?" He nodded. "All the time, and I thank God we didn't." She studied him. The man they said would never speak again, never walk, never love. But here he was, and here she was, not as someone's caretaker, but as a woman seen, heard, and chosen. A partner, a mother, a survivor. Mama Liana called out, running toward them. "Mr. Tofu says the baby needs her own stuffed animal. He's ready to retire." They laughed, and as the sun dipped low behind the estate, golden light flooding the grounds, Dorian pulled Arielle close and whispered, "I never believed in miracles before you." She looked at him, eyes soft. "I wasn't your miracle, Dorian. I was your witness, your reminder." Of what? That even in a house built on lies, love can grow where no one thought it could. They kissed, simple, certain. And inside the mansion, on a mantel once home to cold trophies and forgotten legacies, sat a new symbol, a stuffed giraffe with a bow tie. Still watching, still protecting, still reminding them all that the truth once spoken never goes quiet again. If this story moved, you subscribe to Hidden Black Voices to make sure no healing, no justice, no love goes unheard again.